Grand rising, grand remembering, grand returning. Anyone tuning in, including self and other self. Thank you, Natasha, for joining me. Today may be a little counterintuitive to some. Um, I think it is a grand time, though, to allow the field to speak for us. And I'll take the initiative and go first.
Hmm.
My morning this morning has been a lot about what is my relation to meaning itself? And what posed that question was forgiveness.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Natasha. When you
Mhm.
think of, no, not when you think of, meaning, forgiveness. Maybe I should just start simple. I'll give a meaning of forgiveness. I'm curious, what would your meaning be in this current, say, wave crash, be of forgiveness?
Okay. You want to go first?
I will go
Or
first.
do you want me to
So
go
for
first?
me, I love that when we talk about, and when I say we, I mean myself and whoever, um, meaning and like assign meaning, because that to me always draws back to an anchor of mine personally, which is principle. How are we thinking? Very middle way, very your own sovereign empowerment ability to assign that meaning. I all, but I so like I had gave word that I would. So a meaning though, and I will preface that with often you need to at least assign one or receive one to then mold, change, adapt, understand, understand. So
Yeah.
my meaning for forgiveness, just to start, would be releasing emotions of resentment tied to other, aka a separative invasion, if you will,
Hmm.
influencing self. And so it's forgiveness is the release of that attachment to other.
So thank you very much for having me here first before I jump into that. So I find forgiveness is like you said, you use the word anchor. When we hold resentment, guilt, whatever it might be, towards somebody or a situation or something, it really creates an energetic tether or anchor to that situation, that person, that circumstance. Working within the Akashic Records, I started to realize that we draw the people towards us, we draw the situations, the circumstances to us constantly as part of our soul growth. And usually, our biggest teachers, our biggest lessons, the biggest things that shape us are the ones that have been the toughest and the hardest ones to overcome. And a lot of the times we hold that resentment or that anger not only to the person or the situation or the circumstance, a lot of the times towards ourselves as well. The way I see forgiveness is that one, it doesn't excuse the act, but it releases us from being anchored or tethered to that. It's like that saying that I heard once before, like it's like being angry is drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die, right? So the aspect of forgiveness is a huge part when it comes to healing, when we start understanding the why behind certain things. And I can give you a life um, example of mine in the sense where for the first time that I experienced workplace bullying, it was actually quite brutal. And my manager was sometimes cruel. Like she'd send me to meetings, to the wrong meeting rooms, or, she'd pull me into an office sometimes and tell me that I filled out a form too well and I should have left something out. And I was left kind of like, I was like, it was brutal. It was like maybe, I think three of us resigned within the same week from the same very small department. But it took me to a place where I was really like angry with this person and really, really resentment. And there was like, just like, oh my goodness, because it absolutely affected my health. but because it affected my health, I had to actually go within. I actually had to do the healing. And it completely shifted my career. It completely shifted me into the space where I am today. If that person wasn't placed
Yes.
in my, pathway, you and I would not be having this conversation.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be leading my life in the way that it is. So it gets to a stage where I completely forgave her, forgave myself, because I know that I probably would have also been some sort of a mirror to her in her life as well, you
Mhm.
know. Um, but that time is really, really hard for me. But as soon as I managed to get to the space of going, oh my goodness, understanding that she's also human going through human things, but now I have the utmost gratitude for everything that happened because it's thrown me into this opportunity or this life that I'm leading now that is not that my life wasn't fulfilled before, but it's fulfilled in a different way. It's on passion, it's on purpose, it's expansive, it's incredible because now I work for myself and I support other people in a very different way. So with that aspect of saying thank goodness that that happened, and a lot of the times hindsight tends to help us with that, it actually helped me to forgive her. That gratitude of like, how did that actually work for me, help me to move through that. And it also helped me to forgive myself in many ways because I was thinking that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't perfect enough, I wasn't, we start making all these stories around that, right? Which is often linked to not good enough or perfectionism. So that aspect of forgiveness was actually quite liberating in that sense where now I only have gratitude for that person, but I've done the work for it, right? But once we start seeing those situations, it becomes we become a lot more open to forgiving. And I
Mhm.
feel that forgiveness and gratitude tend to go hand in hand because sometimes we don't understand the why we're going through what we're going through. But even opening up to that aspect of forgiveness starts to give us that responsibility for that situation, and a lot of the times it's like we say, it takes two to tango. It's never really just one person's
Mhm.
fault in anything, right? So I find them as, yeah, forgiveness is an incredible and powerful tool for healing, for self-discovery, and for expansion. Is
Mhm.
what I is my take on forgiveness. And it's like I say, it doesn't excuse the act, but it releases you from being tethered to that.
My, I really, at times it can be difficult to
Mm-hmm.
build up to the language that I enjoy talking about, and I'll frame it in this principle term here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that we got to this point, though. The
Yeah.
conversation I was having earlier just this morning about forgiveness, per usual, I was very inspired to dive into, my maybe my own psyche in terms of how it might not be thought about. But my anchor point, no pun intended, is principle. And that is
Mm-hmm.
why in my mind, since I have associated, whether it's truth or not, that's your own
Mm-hmm.
discretion, that principle, that forgiveness is principle, it gives this freedom to meaning itself. Which, if you haven't already
Mm-hmm.
maybe wrapped your mind around, well, what is sovereignty? What is assigning meaning? Why is that significant to principle? And how is principle tying, how am I tying forgiveness to principle? All of these things that I've in my earlier conversation, which was a good over an hour, to all these things that are blossoming here. I caught on to act of forgiveness, you know,
Mm.
already breaking through limitation on the POV of forgiveness. Oh, is it an act? Is it internal? Is it external? This relation to other. I heard you use the word
Mm.
release. I heard you use, oh my, let me turn that. Oh God, goodness. I heard compassion, living
Mm-hmm.
in the moment. Beautiful. Okay. And healing, gratitude. I,
Mm-hmm.
I love how those are all tied in together. So to try and full circle this here on my end with principle, you made the one of the last comments you made about how we're all, oh, okay, there it is. You might not have thrown out the word harmony, but that kept ringing,
Mm,
kept ringing, kept ringing. Because forgiveness, run with this, is
mhm,
principle, it allows agency for harmony, for forgiveness, for understanding, for compassion, for love, for all these other, say, labels or ways of meaning, assigning
mhm,
meaning, and then experiencing that relation of the meaning to something as
yeah,
simple as forgiveness. And my mind, I love holding on to it because in my world, no colors are, off the palette. And in that,
mhm,
you almost have to be comfortable with uh, sitting with all of it. It kind of it's intense, but it's really paradox because it's almost freeing at the same time. And when I bring up principle to other people, whether it be forgiveness, what is I'll always get a different answer, and I love that. I love
mhm,
that. I love that. I love that. So my next question then I would love to dive into, in context of what I just said, how how does forgiveness, or how might you observe or offer to other people to play or enjoy the fruits of forgiveness and its fluid meaning? I hope that made sense.
mhm.
If not, you could please reword for the, the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I was going to say as well is, so a lot of my clients usually tend to go through quite a lot of kind of like traumatic experiences, and it's like, okay, one thing that we need to know as well is that we, when we're ready to forgive, we're ready to forgive, but it's part of a healing process. So those are the fruits of it. And really, it's kind of like taking that time where it's like, there's so many processes that you could do, like write that person a letter, write that situation a letter, and then burn it. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to send it, but there's an act of actually physically writing something down and burning it, that portal of fire that releases that, creates quite a healing perspective. But if we look at it from, so I always tell my clients, you forgive when you're ready to forgive, right? Which is one thing, because it's still part of that healing process. you know um I suppose it's I was trying to look for an analogy of it. So like, when we get hurt, if it's a cut, we have to create that wound before we're actually able to put cream on it again, kind of as a thing,
Yeah,
or whatever
I'm
it might
hearing
be.
acknowledge, like
Yeah, it's that acknowledge
acknowledge,
it. Yeah,
neutral, but acknowledge it's there, it's not
acknowledge
there,
it.
right?
So forgiveness, what I tend to notice is when we've completely healed from a situation, we're at that point where we can talk about it and there's no emotional charge. If there still is an
Yes.
emotional charge to it, it means that there's still more healing that needs to get done. But it's also being in that space of kind of like taking the time that it needs to take for you as well.
Yes.
But the fruits of forgiveness is that absolute freedom where that situation, that person, that circumstance no longer has a hold on us. And not only that, it means we've gone through a cycle, we've grown, we've expanded, we've moved through that. And from a physical health perspective, it doesn't mean that it means that we whatever we've suppressed, because we're so taught to suppress our emotions and our traumas and everything else, it means that that has released. So we're not actually physically carrying
Yes.
that baggage physically, mentally, and emotionally anymore, which makes us a lot lighter to move through things. So for me, really, the gift of forgiveness is that freedom where we're no longer tied to or attached to that, right? And yeah, it's just that to me helps. And for me, the bigger gift is what have we learned from it,
Yeah.
and who have we become because of that situation, and that's where the gratitude aspect comes in.
Yeah. I love this attaching the verbiage to, or the motion with it,
Hmm. Yeah,
showing more of the I heard you bring up fire, and it made me think of
yeah.
alchemy and how you're
Mm.
preparing, this healing, and all these there. It's interesting because when you really lock into principle on, say, a term or a concept, all these
Hmm.
things are equally um accurate. You know,
Hmm.
sometimes think of, so if I get really practical here, you know, it maybe in one paradigm, forgiveness could be as simple as acknowledgement.
Hmm.
Forgiveness then maybe on another level could be, energetic. Like I need, I'm getting really, this is really passionate.
Yeah.
Principle really
Yeah.
excites me. Another
Hmm.
one could be, maybe up level to resentment. So emotional in the etheric emotion body, and where you talked about
Hmm.
releasing and how that actually influences your health. You could
Yeah.
go one more paradigm outside of that and go to how is it affecting everybody else? So this is where we could bring in
Absolutely.
harmony. And if you want to learn no, what's that saying about if you want to know love, the
Yeah.
universe gives you hardship or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
In that, um, the almost like the beauty, which beauty is also principle if you want to get into that.
Yeah.
But the beauty in the pain sometimes is the opportunity, whether it's
Hmm.
acknowledgement, the healing, the motion. Um, yeah. So
Oh,
thank you for helping
yeah.
me bring that down into practical terms because I tend to go straight to what you can't see, perhaps, but
No, it's beautiful because I don't think we actually realize when we carry that baggage that it's actually carried on all layers of
wow.
our existence, right? And it's because it's meant to. It's part of who we are. Um, and yeah, for me, it's also one of the biggest lessons learned because for us, it's also part of our own expansion to perhaps not place ourselves, turn that experience into wisdom, and
Wisdom.
saying, yeah, it's like, so because wisdom is knowledge and action, really. So we've actioned that, we've hopefully learned from that. It's shifted us, it's changed us. And now moving forward, we will respond to different situations in a different way, having the knowledge and wisdom of the things that we've experienced, right?
Yes.
Before. And one thing that you said that is so important is that life has no meaning. We give meaning to
Yes,
things.
that the greatest
So what are
gift
we
of life.
making mean? Absolutely. It's like we give meaning based on our beliefs, our circumstances, our conditioning, and all the rest of that. And a lot of the times there's a misconception because we're making something mean something, right? Maybe somebody, greeted us in a bad way, and we are just like, that just totally spiraled us. But perhaps they were preoccupied and they were thinking of 500 things at the same time because we don't know what they're living. Yet we made it mean that something about ourselves. So it's almost kind of like one of the tools or techniques that, these are on lighter things. It's like, okay, that happened. I was triggered. Okay, what did I make that mean? Like, what are the emotions that it's that stepping into
Yeah.
that observation? What did I make it mean? And then asking yourself, honestly, is that true? Or is it a story that I've made up based on my conditioning, my beliefs, my limitations, my filters, my perceptions, right? And then that starts to get into that space of introspection, observation within self as to, okay, what did I make this mean? you know like, and we get to discover who we are in
Yes,
those complexities,
we
right?
get to
um
discover who we are. Yeah.
yeah.
And I heard this, it was a quantum conversation. Anyway, let me tie it together. But they were talking about how uh oh, it was contact, the big
Hmm.
ET contact thing, and doing my own kind of research, but go do your own research. But one of the people that I
Yeah.
was tuning into getting data, if you will, was like um and this was channeled. They said this is we wanted it this way. And it made me think, imagine if what we think we want, like these excuses. So let me get a practical example here.
Hmm.
Judges, justice, fairness, remove war, all these big ideas and pendulums. It's interesting to have the perspective of maybe a higher dimension, which was what was channeled, say that would be almost taking the empowerment of knowing yourself, the
Hmm.
opportunity to be the one that's saved. I mean, they didn't use these words. I'm not channeling them currently, but
Hmm.
interesting that that also ties in with this harmony of um, forgiveness and why is it principle? Because no one can define what it means for you. We are literally actively and ongoingly, in my own opinion, sh doing that, which is why it's principled,
Hmm.
because it is without meaning. It's very paradoxical to think about. Beauty's another one. Love, truth, wisdom. You mentioned wisdom.
Hmm.
I should add forgiveness to my little
To
principle
your
list.
checkbox, your
Yeah,
principal
my
list. No, I
principle
love
list.
it. No, it is
Um,
quite beautiful. It is beautiful, and I think that I get asked two questions all the time: is who am I and why am I here? Or the third question is, am I
pathology,
always on the right path? Right? Um, And
psychopathology.
we have many purposes. I think purposes is a windy road and it's constantly changing depending on the decision that we make, because I feel that once we overcome some of our limitations, it opens up a whole plethora of getting to learn and know who we are as we continue on with life. Um, but that's the whole thing. One of the purposes we have in life is to really get to know who we are, because we wear so many masks. It's like I was speaking to my daughter and I was saying, because she's doing psychology at the moment, and I said to her, you know what, like it's beautiful because in the work that I've been doing, I've come to understand that probably the first quarter of our life, we spend time putting on these layers, our conditioning from our parents, from their parents, from our teachers, from our friends, from all the rest of that. So we put on all of these layers. It's like masks, these jackets, these masks that help us navigate society in a way that is proper, and then we spend the next quarter of our lives expressing that, right? Being that in the world. And then we start realizing, wait a minute, you know, and we spend the next quarter maybe healing ourselves. So we work in those
Mhm.
cycles, right? And then we spend the last quarter really emerging and being who we were meant to be. So if
Yeah.
we could actually kind of like shift that in a way where we get to understand that, that would be amazing. Like really releasing those jackets a lot sooner in that space of freedom and self-expression. But that is the beauty of life, is getting to recognize, oh my goodness, I'm wearing this layer that I didn't even know I was, because it's just so part of me. This mask is just so part of my identity, or identity that I've created. Am I really this person? Or am
Yeah.
I this person that my parents wanted, or my teachers wanted, or society wants, or
Or maybe that
whatever it
I
may
wanted
be?
earlier.
Or that I wanted earlier, but starting to realize that I don't want that anymore, because we look at something and we think, oh, that's what I aspire to be, but we don't realize what it actually means to be that,
Yeah.
right? So it's these beautiful layers that we carry. And now I look at it from a space of, oh my goodness, I didn't realize I was wearing, these funny ears or this mask or whatever it might
Uh-huh.
be.
My
And I'm
nose
like,
is
oh
in
my
my
goodness,
face. What?
my nose is in my face. And oh my goodness, it's the same one as my mom. Like she also carries the same thing. So like, how do we shift this and change this and
Yeah.
adapt to it and grow from it? From a place of really going from a place of curiosity, because a lot of sometimes
Curiosity.
we are hugest judges. So a lot of the times we're like, I do, and I'm this and I'm that and I'm whatever it might be, instead of turning around and going, oh my goodness, I have been doing this for the last 40 years. I didn't even realize I was doing it. Now that I do, instead of kind of like going, oh my goodness, I'm a horrible person. No, we didn't know you were doing that. So you'd be a horrible person if you continue the same behavior, knowing that it's not awesome. Not that I think there's horrible people, but it becomes a choice. It's not subconscious anymore. So once we realize our kind of like our patterns, to continue to behave in the same way would be a choice,
Mhm.
right? So when it's unconscious, it's okay, and when it becomes conscious, it's because it's ready to be released. It's because it served you somehow in some
Yeah, very
way up
Carl
until
Jung.
now, right? So just the act of like seeing it and recognizing it's like I don't need it anymore because now I see it. And I can talk about things like people pleasing, whatever it might be, whatever patterns we have. Perfectionism is the other one, whatever it might be. And perfectionism is something else we can talk about as well, because forget, there's a limit. Perfectionism for me is a glass ceiling, you know, because there's no progression from perfection. There's
Hmm.
no way to grow from perfect.
Being in
And
that,
I'm all about cycles of growth.
yeah, cycles, and I'm picking up middle way, being
Hmm.
almost I don't want to use the word comfort. So what's another word? Being indifferent of that meaning. Yeah, how do I want to
Hmm.
word this? This is kind of higher concept here. But in that, when you were talking about, how can we maybe lessen the impact or the pain in terms of our growth, our recognition, our own awareness of self and other, and it jumped in quickly to me. I was like, oh well, we don't want to necessarily control that, do we? And then it jumped straight back to, well, hold on now, because you're defining it. You're once again going into that separate space. And it's how interesting though to kind of high concept here to imagine, are we designed or can we put ourselves in a space or a time where we don't give meaning to anything? That's hypothetical. And how comfortable we become to the meaning that we are aware of at any call that the unconscious. Even sounds very paradoxical because how are you aware of what's unconscious? But you are, because it is the meaning that you are experiencing. So in that though, once you're a conscious or meaning is defined or you're experiencing it and you move through the other layers, um, would it be a better question to maybe or an upgraded question to ask? Does that progression, can we unify that progression? Is there a way
Hmm.
to bring us together? So not so much avoiding or defining or giving meaning to the fact that we are meaning beings, if that makes sense, but
Hmm.
is there a way to unify? Because what I see in forgiveness, um, common denominator of all the iterations it could be is returning to the unity. So almost forgiving ourselves for separating ourselves, forgiving ourselves for, oh, this was an old meaning. I want this new meaning. Oh, I had to know that this is the meaning that I'm at, and like comparing all of the meanings. But we're
Well, yeah.
so kind of going. I know it's kind of hard concept, and I might have butchered that, but what
No, you
would
didn't butcher
maybe
that.
go
One
ahead.
way of saying that is actually looking at instead of saying, the meaning a lot of the times that we give is why is this working against me? Why is this happening to me? And if we start looking at the meaning of how is this working for me? What is the benefit that I've called the situation towards me?
Mhm.
We start to shift that meaning of why we have actually drawn that towards us. So, and that brings us into the unified field in the sense of knowing that if we look at things of people being mirrors to us for all the things that we dislike and all the things that we admire, that is still being mirrored to us, whatever that might be. And that starts to bring in that unity because as soon as I see you are you and I am me, there's that condition. But if, and yes, we are separate, I do believe we are an aspect of the divine experiencing ourselves in various forms, but we're still unity. You're still a reflection of me, right? And I've drawn you into my field because there is a resonance in there somewhere. If that makes sense. So we start
It
to see
does.
that, okay, this is part of me. This is a mirror of me that's being reflected. How and why have I called this towards me? And how is it working for me? What am I to learn and expand from? Am I to learn forgiveness? Am I to learn compassion? Am I to learn boundaries? Whatever it might be, it's seeing that that is there. So no, I absolutely think it's looking at those different meanings of things helps us to work through it. And it's not to excuse stuff or bypass it. I honestly feel that children teach us this where you feel your feelings 100% and then you let them go. And that's the important part is to not be defined by the limitations, the traumas, the experiences that we had. And I think that forgiveness helps us to release that because it doesn't tether us to that anymore. It doesn't become our identity,
Yes.
right? So it's quite beautiful in that sense because that forgiveness aspect allows for reconciliation when we're moving forward, but it's our behavior, our thought processes, and how we approach things differently that shows that we've shifted and changed and that we're perceiving things from a different mindset or heart set, if we think about it, because now we're starting to approach it from a place of love and compassion, perhaps.
Yeah. I love that tie-in, how forgiveness being predominantly an internal motion or force that absolutely mirrors in our reality to us, whether that's other people. And so I think when we do, maybe we lock into, oh, I forgave them, um, realizing what that's doing for you actually on an internal state, perhaps is actually what's reflecting on that external. And so, full circling back to that question of what might be an upgraded question B, I see teeter-tottering towards the more people who say are holding conversations like this, modeling this introspective, if you will, almost
Mm-hmm.
ripples out in a way that we don't have to necessarily incontinge, if that's the right word, on someone's
Mm-hmm.
ability to assign meaning to that principle, the principle
Yeah.
itself.
Mm-hmm.
A lot like frequency. If frequency is one of the very few things that can penetrate the body without your consent. Maybe not your spiritual consent, but like
Absolutely.
your physical 3D consent. So in a way, I can see that being a more powerful way of aiding um unity consciousness, I guess, in terms of forgiveness and this principle. But
You're very right, because there's that whole have you heard of Ho'oponopono? The
yes,
Ho'oponopono
yes, I
prayer?
have Hawaiian
That is
forgiveness.
absolutely the
Yeah, and they
Hawaiian
did
forgiveness
studies in
prayer.
for psychopathology. They did studies on
Yeah.
like on math. Very cool stuff.
And that was like that the first doctor that did it, he didn't even see the patients, he did it to their files, that
Yes,
I'm
yes.
sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love
I
you.
love
And
you.
that, as
Yeah,
simple as that, but you that feel, I suppose it's that intention, because our thoughts ripple out those vibration, our intention ripple out the vibrational frequency. And again, it's like when we're connected to somebody, there's that attachment that's there. So it
yeah,
becomes very important because it raises that frequency of that attachment and it transcends the relationship.
yeah. I found that very, very interesting, and it resonated so deep, especially when I
Mm,
realized that they were almost revealing if you were ready to hear how I don't want to get into conspiracy, but in a way, his frame of reality, even though all parts are coming out to give it a picture or a relation his experience with it, it almost drops into that space of your reality cannot
hmm
be received by any other reality. We can tap in. It's interesting. We can tap into all of the shared because they're all one. It's not actually separate. And yet
So,
your own individual separation cannot be no one can affect it. No one can take it from you. And that leads in then to this Ho'oponopono. He was affecting other people, but not their sense of reality. It's almost
no.
like, yeah, yeah. These are the kind of topics, though, that I want to get better at being able to hold because just having them in my head and understanding them and, go doing my own research, I want to be anchoring this more in the field. More people need to know that these levels of thinking exist. So thank you for joining me. Um, I'm gonna wrap it up though for today. So I'm Austin Jacob. Thank you. Until next time, and Natasha,
Thank you so much for having me on here. I'm Natasha Rocha, and yeah, raising the vibes is what I do.
namaste.